I would like to be the first in my family to break 100 years.
She lives life full throttle, and it turns out she was doing something fairly common to cause her heart to race full throttle as well. Every woman needs to hear this, and we tackle it right now on All Things Heart.
From the University of Kansas Health System.
I am amazed. The team here is great.
I came on a Tuesday, and then by Saturday I had a heart in me.
I have never seen a group of people work together so good as this team of heart specialists. I mean, it's just unreal.
Stand by to set up show.
And the Dolph C. Simons Jr. Family Broadcast Studio.
Roll.
Always makes you feel like you're the most important patient on the planet.
I felt heard, and that was really big.
This is All Things Heart.
Good morning. It is Thursday, February 2nd. I'm Alexis Del Cid. February is National Heart Health Month. And this is an all-new season of All Things Heart. Every Thursday at 10 a.m., we give you direct access to our doctors to ask your heart-related questions. Here's what we're talking about today. A woman's greatest health risk, cardiovascular disease. It kills more women than all forms of cancer combined. And the American Heart Association says only 44% of women know their risk of cardiovascular disease. So we're going to go over all the questions you need to be asking your doctors. Plus, the employee that makes everyone's day better here at the health system. It's just a fact. This is Shaq. Shaq plays a crucial role behind the scenes, and the next time you're here, you may just see him front and center dancing down the hallways. Can't wait to show you that story. We want to get your questions answered every episode, so be sure to send them in to us on YouTube, Facebook, and the All Things Heart email. You will find those right here on your screen. The more you know about heart disease, the better chance you have of beating it, right? The American Heart Association has some pretty surprising numbers, though. Heart disease and stroke cause 1 out of every 3 deaths in women every single year. These women are our best friends, our mothers, sisters, aunts, coworkers, your wives. Here's the great news, though. 80% of cardiac and stroke events can be prevented. That's why education and action are so critical, and we love that you are watching this broadcast because you're about to meet a woman who's doing all the work. She's working to educate herself, but she's also sharing her journey with hopes of educating others. And there's a pretty good chance you might recognize this woman because she's been on many screens before this for many, many years, and oh yes, she happens to be our boss.
It's really important that we get to the heart of what we're doing. What I'd really just like to see is video of him with his monitor on.
Her entire life, Jill Chadwick has moved at 2 speeds, fast and faster.
I don't know anything but full throttle.
Before becoming Director of Media Relations and the Medical News Network at the University of Kansas Health System.
I really like some of the videos that I'm seeing.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Before enjoying a decades-long career as an Edward R. Murrow and Emmy Award-winning television news journalist. The earliest years of Jill's life.
I grew up on a farm, and so we were physical from the get-go.
Were spent on the family farm in northwest Missouri under the firm yet gentle wing of her beloved grandma Mabel.
I had a grandmother who instilled in us that you should never be idle.
To this day, Jill loves to affectionately drop bits of knowledge she calls Mabelisms.
My grandmother would tell you that burning the candle at both ends is how she saw her way.
Jill works hard, plays hard, and her entire life, rest was never a priority, even after what should have been a big wake-up call 30 years ago as a new mom.
My heart just started like racing, and this really lovely man comes over from the other side of the pool and he said, "Hi, I'm Dr. So-and-so. I'm a cardiologist here at a convention at the hotel, and I can tell that you're in distress."
Shortly after, Jill was diagnosed with something called LGL syndrome.
When you're diagnosed with a heart problem, it's kind of scary. right?
But in typical Jill Chadwick fashion, it wasn't scary enough to slow her down for 30 more years. And in 2022, another episode of a racing heart finally prompted her to make an appointment with a cardiologist, Dr. Shannon Hoos-Thompson.
What I liked about Dr. Hoos-Thompson is that she is no nonsense, get to the point, and just told me, matter of fact, you're okay.
And then Dr. Hoos-Thompson told Jill something that, let's face it, everyone but her grandma Mabel had probably been telling her her entire life. Except this time, she was willing to listen. We are so excited to welcome Jill Chadwick, news director of the Medical News Network here at the health system, who also happens to be the patient that we are featuring for this broadcast, along with her cardiologist, Dr. Shannon Hoos-Thompson. And we also have urogynecologist, Dr. Melanie Meister. All right, Jill, though, everyone's been asking me since seeing the promos for this on Facebook, what's the advice from Dr. Hoos-Thompson that you were finally ready to listen to?
Okay, well, listen carefully, because I'm sure you've never, ever heard this from a doctor before. She said, you need to get a good night's sleep. You may want to cut back on your coffee. And she said, let's talk about stress. You know, so really, it just goes back to diet, exercise, drink a lot of water. If you could just get prescriptions for a good night's sleep and water, I think the whole world would be right.
I feel like only you would listen if it was a prescription from the doctor, though, because you weren't going to listen to anyone else till you saw a doctor. And I do want to go back to 30 years ago. You're in the hotel swimming pool. A doctor is there. First of all, great odds that the doctor was there. But he diagnosed you with something that I had never heard of, LGL syndrome. What did he tell you that was? And then I'm going to ask also Dr. Hoos-Thompson. But Jill, how did you understand what that was?
The way that I understood it, it was the cause of, what he suspected was the cause of why my heart was racing, because the way he got me to stop it, which you can also ask the doctor why this works, but he had me hold my breath twice, really hard and long. And then he said, if it happens again, sometimes people take ice cold cans and put it to their face or put it to their chest. Some people, he said, would lie down on a floor, and he goes, there's a thing they can do for it now. Of course, this was 30 years ago, and it was some kind of procedure, and it was relatively new. And I said, well, is it better that I do it now when I'm younger, or do I wait? And he said, you're otherwise healthy. I would just wait and try to manage and learn what was causing it. So I went and got a complete and full heart workup, and was told the same things that Dr. Thompson told me, Hoos-Thompson.
Oh, geez.
And that was to cut back on my caffeine, make sure I get a good night's rest. But I will tell you this, and then I'll let the doctors talk, that every time I do have one of these episodes, I can always trace it back to those three things. Trying to light my way with, lighten my way with both candles burning, drinking too much caffeine because I didn't get enough sleep, and not drinking enough water. And those things, for me, seem to make a big difference. I don't know why. They probably know the science, but I don't get it.
Well, we're in luck because we do have two doctors here who know the science behind so many things. LGL syndrome, do you still diagnose people with that and tell them to put cold cans on their face? That sounds primitive. But we do a lot of low-tech things in medicine.
So first off, as far as Jill's case, I don't think LGL was really the driving issue.
Okay.
But what it is basically it's within a spectrum of conditions where you have a short circuit develop within your heart, and that's what drives a true rapid heart and accelerated heart rate. And the procedures and maneuvers she's describing are what we call Valsalva maneuvers, where you bear down, and sometimes that change in the nervous stimulation can change cause a delay in how that signal is being sent through your heart, and then reset it and let it go back to normal. So that their Valsalva maneuvers is what she's describing. That's that kind of the bear down or their cold compress and into your face and things like that to help kind of just reset. A lot of it's kind of more the nervous stimulation and some of the other stimulations that can help reverse it.
And is it common for you to see other patients that happen to be women as well that have these symptoms, and you literally tell them you need to rest, you need to meditate, and you need to cut back on your caffeine?
Well, the first thing that I really want to emphasize is that the symptoms are real. What you're feeling, what you're experiencing is happening. Whether or not it's truly your heart going into a fast rhythm, whether it's appropriate or inappropriate, that's the thing that we have to really figure out is what's driving it. And more often than not, I find out that the heart it's a very reactive organ. It's responding to what the body's telling it to do. A lot of our organs, a lot of our body tissues act kind of silently. We're not really just do what they're supposed to do without us really being aware of it or have to do anything to trigger them. The heart, on the other hand, gets told what to do or how to respond to certain signals and stimulus or lack of stimulus. And a lot of times in that manifests as symptoms. So it can be more of a sign of something else, somewhere else going on in the body. And I would tell you stress, sleep disorders, how you eat, how you drink, especially stimulants or lack of stimulants, if you've been used to them, can set off a lot of these symptoms. And so the symptoms are real, but what drives them is really what we have to figure out. And I would tell you that's what we work through with Jill.
And we have Dr. Melanie Meister here, and some of you watching might be wondering, well, gee, it's a heart show. You have an OBGYN on who specializes in menopause. Here's the deal, and I didn't know this before I started working here, which is what's one of the perks of working with brilliant doctors. There's a huge overlap between heart health and menopause. Dr. Meister, how closely do you work with cardiologists?
So by the nature of what I do, the majority of my patients are perimenopausal or postmenopausal, and you just mentioned the huge overlap between menopause and cardiovascular disease and other heart symptoms. So actually a large majority of my patients already are established with a cardiologist, and I work closely with their cardiologist to manage their menopausal symptoms or manage their pelvic floor symptoms, especially if we're considering surgery for them or not, but if those symptoms are in some way affecting their heart or their cardiovascular disease. For patients who aren't already established, some of them I do end up referring to cardiology, but like I said, many of them already are established, so we communicate back and forth about medications or surgical plans.
I even heard you two talking before the episode began about collaborating on something, because it's so important that to you, Dr. Hoos-Thompson, to have work and collaboration with OBGYNs and urogynecologists.
The relationship of women in cardiovascular disease to what's going on with their hormonal body is becoming better understood all the time. And not just when you talk about specifically that's a great window, is the menopausal window is a great window to look at women and understand cardiovascular risk, but also menarche, pregnancy, along the whole lifespan of a woman and what's going on with her reproductive system and everything involved in that. And it's a two-way street. Sometimes certain physiologic things that drive cardiovascular health can set off things inappropriately in the reproductive system and in the other way around. And I would say, as we talk about tomorrow being Heart Disease Awareness Month with Go Red for Women, the focus is on women tomorrow in particular, I would say that's a big area that we're starting to understand better, that there's been more data come out of it and recognizing how we can intervene or how to recognize women who truly do have risk, or for that matter don't have risk, when it comes to the long-term cardiovascular well-being, and then how to incorporate that as we make decisions about making them function better, feel better on all fronts.
And we have a QR code we want to tell our viewers about right up on your screen right now. The QR code you see will be up the entire episode, so you scan it. This will take you to our heart health quiz. It's a simple quiz to take, and it will tell you your risk of cardiovascular disease. So be sure to do that. And speaking of Jill, you had a cardio score done on one of our morning medical update episodes. What was your score?
0. I had a 0, and in this case, that was good.
It's the only time scoring a 0 is great news. Dr. Hoos-Thompson, what does a cardio score mean? What are you testing?
So it's called a coronary artery calcium score. You'll hear it abbreviated as a CAC score. And basically what we're looking at is people who are intermediate risk or kind of borderline intermediate risk for cardiovascular events or problems.
And that's Jill going through.
Hi, Jill, in the scanner.
The scanner right now.
Yeah, so and basically what we're able to do is use a CT scan, just a straight scan. We don't have to give you any extra dye or anything like that. And we're just able to see if there's calcium in the blood vessels of the heart. And we can then measure the level of that calcium and then put it into, based upon your gender, your age, help better understand your risk for cardiovascular disease typically over the next 5 to 10 years.
Dr. Meister, do you recommend then, if a woman comes to you and says, I'm going through menopause, my heart's been pounding, would you say get a cardio score? Would you say go see Dr. Hoos-Thompson?
I I would probably recommend that they start with either their primary care doctor or a cardiologist if they're having symptoms. I don't typically prescribe the screening tests or diagnostic tests, but I do, like I said, refer to cardiology if needed based on their symptoms.
The American Heart Association has some pretty profound numbers. 38% of participants in clinical cardiovascular trials are women. Just 38%. But we just told our viewers about how women are at such a high risk of cardiovascular disease. So why are there so few women in these trials? Do you have any insight into that, Dr. Hughes-Thompson?
The answer is we don't get it. And it doesn't make sense, and we haven't pushed hard enough. So I would tell you, if you go back to 1979, it was at 18%.
Only 18% of women?
Worse. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Women make up more than half of the population. We have to know. So then there was a push as we get into the 90s and early 2000s to start to look at women closer and make sure that we were incorporating, and we got it up to that 35%. Unfortunately, stalled out. And so if we're going to do a better job, then we flat out have to make it a priority. And unfortunately, we haven't achieved that. But again, that's why we have to continue to try and recognize the gaps in what we understand, and then how we change that. So it's an ongoing process, but I think it's an important statistic to just open our eyes to how much we don't know and how many opportunities we miss. And I would say a lot of the social determinants, women just don't get enrolled for every reason, and there's no exception anymore. There's no excuse. Women have to be checked on.
Well, we need to keep that push going. I want to bring Jill back in because I'm so curious. What do you think? Because I would imagine relaxing and resting more goes against every fiber of your being, Jill. So what would Grandma Mabel think of your changes?
Well, I will tell you this. She would tell me to listen, and that another Mabelism was that whatever the doctor said had to be gospel, because they went to school and we were paying them money to give us advice. And even on the farm, I don't care if we broke a bone, we had to put on good go to church clothes on to go see the doctor as a sign of respect. So I think I learned a lot from my grandma, and she would want me to get plenty of rest so I could get up and work hard.
And Jill's not exaggerating. You're not exaggerating when you talk about breaking a bone and still having to get ready. In fact, I want to play one of my favorite stories that you shared with us about Grandma Mabel.
I grew up in a small town, in a place where when you went to see the doctor, you had to put on nice clothes. I can remember breaking my ankle one time, and they made me change into clean jeans before I went to the doctor.
Your family did?
Yes.
That's respect.
True story.
As there should be. I love that story. What's your reaction, doctors? Dr. Meister, I'll start with you.
Oh, I love that. We don't have any expectations. Patients can come as they are, certainly, but
not by Grandma Mabel's rules.
I guess not. We're happy to see you, however you're dressed.
I think that's really what a fabulous thing that Grandma Mabel instilled in you. We're getting a lot of questions from our viewers, so I want to hit up our community questions. Becca has a great one. This is for Dr. Meister. Becca would like to know, if you experience health issues during pregnancy, should you automatically see a cardiologist after giving birth?
I think that's a really good question, and the answer is it sort of depends on what those health issues are. We do know that some health issues that affect women during pregnancy, like high blood pressure, preeclampsia, gestational diabetes, preterm labor, those things actually have been found to be associated with a higher risk of cardiovascular disease down the road. But many of those things resolve with delivery, and if there aren't any ongoing symptoms, it's not necessary that a patient see a cardiologist immediately after delivery. There are some other conditions, though, like cardiomyopathy, that can affect women in pregnancy, and those women do tend to have lingering symptoms or lingering issues that would warrant follow-up with a cardiologist.
I have a question, and I'm not sure which one of you is best to address it to, so I'll say, give me a sign, whoever wants to answer first. Jill experienced these first heart flutters when her little girl was 2, so you were a new mom, 24-month-old. Do you think that was triggered by birth, like just having recently given birth and still being in the new mama phase, or do you think that was just a heart thing that would have happened anyway because Jill's Jill, running and gunning? Dr. Hughes-Thompson, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, so I would tell you no and yes. It's both. So typically arrhythmias do occur more frequently in pregnancy, especially second, third term. They become unmasked, so to speak, just the stresses and hormonal changes, signals, just a lot of the dynamics that are taking place in a woman's body during pregnancy. So we do see arrhythmias for the first time in pregnancy in a fair number of women. That being said, 2 years out would escape that window, that it wasn't triggered from the pregnancy. Now, knowing how she functions as a human being, and now she's caring for to her maximal ability of this child without sacrificing her responsibility as a wife, as a co-worker, is all of the above, that sets it off. So the fact that it changes the responsibility, when a woman becomes a mother, the change in how you're viewed in society, the change of how you view yourself and how you're treated absolutely changes. And so I do think that that had something to do with what then triggered those symptoms and those episodes that she was dealing with.
Got it. Patty would like to know, as you get closer to menopause, or you just are approaching that, what questions should women be asking their doctors? Is it possible to truly prepare physically for menopause, Dr. Meister?
I would say no. Everyone experiences symptoms of menopause differently, and I think you can prepare as much as you want, but what you go through may not be the same as what your friends or sister or mother went through. I will say that although we're talking about risks of cardiovascular disease, and especially those after menopause, a lot of what we talk about with women is lifestyle and behavioral modifications that they can do that will modulate that risk, things like smoking and diet and exercise.
Vicki writes in, my cousin struggled with heart problems when she was a new mom. Her doctor told her that that was very common. So she wants to know, and I think you've touched on this, why that is. And do all new moms struggle with heart problems in one way or another?
The answer, absolutely not.
Right.
It's not normal to have those things happen to you. So if you're experiencing those symptoms, they need to be looked at, they need to be expressed. You need to at least tell your doctor, let somebody know what's going on and how you're experiencing it, and help us understand it with you. And as I mentioned earlier, that is a great window. Pregnancy is a great window because of the dynamics that take place to look at a woman's health, not just where it is then, but what it means for her future down the road. And way too often, again, the woman becomes attached to her family. When she becomes a mother, when she's pregnant, she's attached. And so her responsibilities aren't just for her own health, but to others. But the first priority, and we've talked about this with other shows, still has to be you.
Right.
If a mom doesn't take care of herself first, if a woman doesn't take care of herself first, there's no way she can do the job she needs to do or take on the responsibility she does with her family. So put yourself first is always has to be there.
Some questions are coming in for you, Jill. Marie wants to know, well, she shares, I can't imagine cutting back on caffeine. I need it. How did you do it?
Well, I had good incentive. I didn't like a racing heart, but I will tell you it was not easy. Caffeine, coffee in particular, straight black, because there was never any sugar or any kind of creamer in a newsroom, and Alexis, you know that is true. Yeah. So that was the gas in our engine and just kept us going. So what I did was I don't deprive myself. I just don't drink it after 12 o'clock noon.
Okay.
I just gave myself a window.
And you don't, I'm guessing you don't power it down as much as you can before noon?
No.
You drink in moderation?
No, not anymore. No. And
Margie,
I will be known to have a latte from time to time with a little bit of milk. So.
Right. I've seen you do that. I know that. Margie wants to know if you meditate, and if so, how often do you meditate?
Meditation is something I am trying to perfect. I have a racing mind. It's like a BB in a bathtub, and it is very, very hard for me to quiet it. My sister's trying to help me with it, honestly. And it is something that I am trying to be more conscious of every day, and I'm trying to do it early in the morning as I start my day.
Have you had any racing heart incidents? Jen wants to know, since implementing your changes.
Yes, every time I don't follow my doctor's advice and what I know to be true, it happens.
Oh, that's good. So that's what everyone needs to take note. Every time you don't follow your doctor's advice, it comes back. Colleen saw a headline the other day and she wanted me to ask about it. Colleen writes, she read that everyone over the age of 50 should look at being put on a statin. Okay, first of all, in layman's terms, what's a statin, and should everyone over the age of 50 be put on one?
Well,
who wants to take that one?
So statins are a cholesterol-altering medication. So there's a whole group of them, and they've been around since the 80s, so we know a lot about them. And what they do is they just stabilize plaque and the buildup of plaque within vessels, blood vessels, especially vessels of things like the heart. So it deters things like heart attack or stroke or other vascular problems. So they're a great medicine. They are very safe. Should everybody be put on one? The answer is no. And one of the greatest reasons, you brought up a coronary artery calcium score, and trying to decide one of the reasons we do those on people are people who are kind of on the fence about whether or not it's worth being more aggressive about making somebody take a pill every day and then reassessing it. If you have a CAC score of, I don't know, 0, there is no proven benefit of that. So it is, you have to have a certain level of risk to justify being on a medicine or treatment.
So Jill's a perfect example of someone who should not be on a statin.
I would never, at this point, I can reassess her again. I want to know how Jill's doing in 5-10 years from that score, but I would tell her that a statin medicine would not be appropriate for her because it's not going to alter her cardiovascular events in the next 5 to 10 years. And so the answer is not everybody, but unfortunately in our society there's lots of people who smoke, are diabetic, high blood pressure, obese, and guess what? Those people, one, we've got to alter those things, but in the meantime, medications like statin are a great way to help alleviate some of that risk that you have.
One of our Facebook viewers writes in, Angela wants to know, is there a connection between hormones and heart disease? Is there a certain hormone that causes heart disease or raises an alarm?
I would say there's not a certain hormone that causes heart disease, but certainly the hormonal changes, as we've been talking about in and around menopause, can be associated with some cardiovascular symptoms. And I don't know if she's speaking about hormone replacement therapy afterwards, but we know that hormone replacement therapy is not indicated for cardiovascular disease prevention in women, and even starting it too late or too long after menopause could be detrimental.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. I want to bring back in all of our guests. Jill, I would love to get your final thoughts on this, and if you have any more Mabelisms for us, so I want to start with you.
I do have a real quick Mabel story. She had her first heart attack, or a heart attack, her only heart attack, when she was 35. And looking back on it now, we probably would think that was a broken heart because her daughter died suddenly of asthma, and it was hard on the whole family. I wasn't even here yet, but this is a story that we were told, and it made us watch our health very, very closely. But that woman lived to be 98. Her goal was to be 100, and I've told Grandma many times, I'm going to make it. I'm going to 100. And I just am so grateful that we have doctors like the ones that are with us today that are smart, and they share and they keep up with the science, and God willing, and their good advice, I'm going to make 100 or beat it.
I feel like you're going to beat it. I feel like Jill's going to be a news story one day, another news story, and we'll still be here working for you. Dr. Meister, do you have any final thoughts for our viewers and all the women watching, and men too?
I would say if you're having any cardiovascular symptoms, definitely speak up, talk to your doctor, find out if it would be worthwhile to see a cardiologist.
Dr. Hoos-Thompson, speaking of cardiologists, what about you? Any final thoughts for our guests?
You know, I think more than anything else, it always is about empowering. This month, the month Heart Disease Awareness Month, tomorrow, Go Red for Women Day, it's about awareness, but it's not fear awareness, it's empowering awareness. We can do better, and the majority of that lies in how you take care of yourself, aka Jill Chadwick and aka Alexis Ilser. So the bottom line is empower yourself, get accurate information, get help. Like she talks about using her sister to help meditate more, using your doctors, using your co-workers, and helping each other better understand disease and work through it together. Man, you can do a lot as an individual, but you can do so much more when you work as a team. And so empower yourself, know the real data, and that's where the change happens, and that's where the impact is.
We love bringing you this next segment. It's called Behind the Mask. You guys like that? It's like a superhero theme. Behind the mask. Okay, it's where, thank you, Bob, for voicing that. Or is it Bob? We give you a sneak peek during Behind the Mask at what our healthcare workers are like on a personal level. So let's start with Dr. Meister. We want to get to know you better behind the mask. And of all the pictures we have, there is a very common theme. It's you outside with your boys. So tell us about your family, because they're gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. I'm married to my husband, Jeff. He's an orthodontist. And we have 2 boys. boys. Brecken is 5, and that's Sam right there. He's almost 2. And yes, we are outside constantly.
Adorable.
Doing as much as we can.
Where are your favorite places to go when you're outside? Do you guys go hiking yet, or just out in the yard playing? What do you guys do?
Mostly right now out in our yard, out exploring the neighborhood. They both love to be on their bikes, so we're mostly chasing them around their bikes.
You'll be chasing them around for years.
Yeah, I think so.
Next up, we have Dr. Hoos Thompson, and Dr. Hoos Thompson has some real cuties to share with us. Look at these babies. Okay, your house is filled with these adorable little kittens. Have you named them yet?
So we had 6 kittens last fall, and around the holidays they all found their new homes.
So do you raise kittens and rehome them? You rescue them? What do you do?
Yes and no. So there was a plan to have, they're called Maine Coons, so they are a very specific breed. They're gentle giants. They become huge. Domestic cats, but they found their homes. It's been fun because since these pictures, we've gotten pictures from people that have now become part of their families. They're missed, but we have our own pets. Last night I was watching The Lion King with my bulldog, who I couldn't change channels because he was so intently watching The Lion King.
On your lap, probably, right?
Oh, I have the video of that if you want to see it. So pets are an important part of my life, to say the least, and I just try to keep it because you can get too many pets. I very much believe that, but it was wonderful to have these kittens.
Can you though? I don't know. I debate. Don't animals lower blood pressure? Is that a myth or is that true? Because I always read that if you're petting your dog or holding a cat in your lap, it relaxes your heart. Just say yes, will you? She's like, yes.
No, I mean, we talk about pet therapy and things like that, but there are times that they are my pet anxiety. But I would tell you, they're wonderful.
Make your world better.
They do a lot more than lower blood pressure. They just make your life more complete.
They do.
If you can have a pet.
Well, we have another story that will make everyone's heart happy just watching this on Heart Month. We have so many incredible teammates here at the health system, and among them is a guy named Shaquille Frazier, who goes by Shaq. Shaq works so hard every day, but he does it in a way that makes everyone around him just feel his energy, and you'll feel good. Take a look.
How y'all doing, everybody?
With his slick dance moves and his signature shout-out,
Yes, yes, yes.
Shaquille Frazier, who goes by Shaq,
Light him up, my man.
lights up every space he enters at the University of Kansas Health System, where you'll see him on any given day working as a housekeeper.
Light him up.
And Shaq never misses a beat.
Stop to the left, stop to the right, come to the window, go to the side. Go. I think every time I bring smile to anyone's face, I think I've fulfilled my purpose for that day.
Always put on the gloves.
He's the one restocking the hospital carts and closets,
We do this daily.
pulling the dirty linens,
The job is never done.
and removing and transporting all the hospital waste to the proper places. It's a huge job.
Like my man John Legend says, take it slow.
And Shaq takes great pride in doing it.
Everyone plays a key integral part in how the hospital runs. I think it's one of the best jobs I've ever had.
By every account, he does it flawlessly.
He's a hard worker. He's never in a bad mood. He listens, he leads. He's a fantastic employee. I take 10 of Shaq, how about that?
Hey, good to see you, Sarah.
Keeps everything pulled nice and neat. We don't have to call, he's always here. He's just awesome to work with.
Y'all have a beautiful day now.
Moving from floor to floor, department to department.
What's up? How are you? Pretty good, my man.
Interacting with hundreds of other employees, patients, and visitors every day.
Light them up all the way to the top. No, stop like that.
Not only is Shaq a source of joy for so many, but on an even deeper level, he's a source of inspiration.
I have a son that has autism. He's 11, and he's nonverbal, and Shaq gives me so much hope for my son.
But Shaq is just being Shaq, doing a job he loves, with people he loves, who love him right back.
We aim to please, we aim to make sure everyone has the best hospital experience here.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Coming up next week on All Things Heart, what are the odds of this happening?
If you could script who miraculously would accidentally show up on the night you had cardiac arrest unexpectedly, you couldn't have drawn it up any better.
a life-threatening event on his daily jog, and it's who else was there to save his life that's jaw-dropping. Next Thursday morning at 10 a.m. We'll see you then.